Morning, this is the Agricultural Committee, the last Agricultural Committee of the meeting of the year on the 22nd of December. Call to order. Can we have roll call? You don't say roll call.
Roth,
Here.
Allen, Juby,
Here.
Leonard,
Leonard present.
Sanchez,
Sanchez present.
Williams,
Williams present.
Pirog, Tepe, Kenyon.
There.
We have quorum.
Okay, we need a unanimous consent to approve the minutes.
Roth makes a motion to do an unanimous
Is there
for
any,
the minutes.
everybody agreed? Okay. So be it. Is there any public comment? There is none. Now, we have a rare experience this morning. Joe White, the president of the Kane County Farm Bureau, is taking Mr. Arnold's place.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. As Mike mentioned, I am Joe White, president of the Kane County Farm Bureau. I live in Caneville, row crop operation with my wife, and I have a couple of kids that help. I have 4 children, but 2 of them help in the farming end of it. One son does a lot of hay acres, and the other son actually raises about 40 acres of fall decor, so pumpkins and gourds and Indian corn and those types of things that he wholesales. And those 2 help me in the farming operation. So I'm here today just to kind of bring an update on where we're at and a couple of things that we're doing on the county. The Illinois Farm Bureau is our state association. There are about 94 county farm bureaus, I believe, across the state. The Illinois Farm Bureau has asked every county to get a resolution from their county board that they're entitling allies in agriculture. And Mike, I don't know if they have the link publication in your agenda packets. So that's a publication that the Illinois Farm Bureau does publish and distribute throughout the state. And it does give a brief outline of what they are asking county farm bureaus to do with their county boards. So our time frame is that I'll go over a couple of things this month, but next month, Mr. Arnold is expected to be here, and he'll talk about some census data on the benefits and the contribution that agriculture provides to Kane County, both in economic and production capacity. And he'll also present the resolution for the Ag Committee to review at that time. And then in March, we will present it to the county board for their approval. We've always had a good working relationship in Kane County. You know, I want to acknowledge the fact that Kane County is the only county in the state that has a farmland preservation ordinance or program. That's unique. There are very few counties and or states that have those types of programs. And I think to date, we've preserved over 6,000 acres of farmland. The majority of it is in the western portion of the county, which is the least amount of development. But as time goes, those things can change. You know, we realize that agriculture is an important aspect of the county, and we acknowledge the fact that the county itself has developed a program and installed a program that preserves that agricultural heritage. The Growing for Cane program, we were involved in getting some of that up and running. So that provides opportunities for people in the urban areas to produce food in a small scale, but food production is food production, no matter where you're at or whatever scale you're at. one other thing that I did want to mention is Kane County does have what I refer to as a right to farm ordinance. So it exempts agriculture activities from a number of nuisance ordinances that the county has. And that's important because as you move from west to east, you do get into more rural subdivisions and even that closer to towns and whatnot, municipalities. And I farm right up to the backyards of a number of homes. And if I had to comply with the nuisance ordinances, it would be quite a deterrent on my ability to perform my duties. If I had to do it at certain hours of the day, or if I had to reduce the noise, many of our operations produce noise, dust, whatnot that a number of people don't like when they move out into the country. They don't realize some of these things do occur, but so we do appreciate the fact that we are exempt from that. Livestock odor is another issue that always comes about when you start talking about rural subdivisions and whatnot. So certainly do appreciate the fact that we are exempt from that. And then the stormwater ordinance was just rewritten here a few years ago. And we had input on that to where in our building sites, as we expand buildings and increase our impervious surfaces, under the old rules of the ordinance, we would have been subject to withholding or detention of water. We were able to negotiate that to where we can do conservation practices on our farms, which is a big benefit because in many cases we are limited to where we can build and to put in a detention is going to take up a lot of area that we would not be able to get any revenue off of, which is important in our business. So those are the things I just wanted to bring up and thank the county for working with us on that. I do have copies of a publication that our county distributes on a monthly basis, speaks about our insurance company and some of the events that we're doing. We have coming up in April, we have a Touch a Tractor event that we've done now for over, this is our 17th annual Touch a Tractor, where we open up our front lawn, which we're located on Randall Road, right by Costco, for all of those that may not know. And we invite the public in we bring in machinery, modern machinery and antique machinery, and invite the public in to see and talk about agriculture. We have a number of volunteers, get a lot of support from the AGCO company in Batavia. We have a foundation that awards between 20 and 25 college scholarships each year, to the tune of about $20,000, $25,000. There are a couple of them that we manage for other entities in addition to what we do at the Farm Bureau. So I have copies, like I say, of that publication, and then I also have for any new member of the Ag Committee, our publication that our Farm Bureau produces. And also, I want to mention that any new member, if you aren't not currently a Farm Bureau member, we will ask you to sign a complimentary application to be a member, as long as you're on the Ag Committee. That way you'll be getting these publications on a regular basis and be updated on what we are doing in the county. I guess I really don't have anything else. If there's any questions for me or any concerns you may have.
I just have a question. When can we sign up?
Anytime.
Okay, so I can do it after the meeting.
Today.
Can I do it today is what I was asking? I
Don't
can't
have a
do it.
membership?
I don't, I didn't bring any applications with me.
Oh, okay,
Online.
You know, I,
You can.
Yes, you can.
okay,
I can do it online.
yes.
So I'm on the jobs committee, not this one, but I'd like to sign up too because obviously jobs in agriculture are extremely important. I'd like to get those publications.
Absolutely.
All right, that'd be fine.
And I would just like to compliment the newspaper. I get it. What does it come every? couple
Every
of
month,
months?
isn't it?
Is it-
Once a
is
month.
I read it from cover to cover. It is just interesting. It has a wide range of information from economics, commodities. It's a fascinating, actually a fascinating paper.
Thank you.
Well done.
And I would agree with the chairman on that. I've been getting it for over 10 years because my insurance is with Country, which requires you join, and I enjoy reading it cover to
Mhm.
cover too.
Mr. Van Kerkhoff.
Good morning. Thank you, Joe. I just wanted to thank the Farm Bureau. And for the new board members as a bit of perspective, when our staff goes to different communities and talk about our Growing for Cane or Farmland Protection Program, one of the things that always surprises us that people are surprised about is the relationship, the great relationship that the Kane County Board and our Kane County Farm Bureau have. And during my tenure here, I mean, that relationship has been very deliberate in terms of maintaining the relationships with board members as we get new county board members due to the outreach of the Farm Bureau board. We continue as a staff to be, mindful and appreciate being able to bounce things off our Farm Bureau when we're looking at proposing changes to the county board for ordinances. And conversely, when the county board created the agriculture committee, that sent a huge signal to all of our farmers and to the Farm Bureau that the county is committed. So this is a rarity. And we all benefit. So thank you, Joe. And Steve is usually here, so it's good to see you. And thank you, because I know you represent a board that works very hard for your members and for our community. So thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may follow up on that, we just had a meeting yesterday and I want to share with you, Joe, that Kane County is committed to protecting our farms. And the agriculture brings such beauty to our communities and such beauty to Kane County and industry as well. So it's wonderful to have be able to go through pastoral land, if I may, and just being able to breathe a little bit and see it right 5 minutes from my home. And I live in an urban area. It's a wonderful thing and it will be protected.
I wondered if you were going to talk.
I have to, no, I live in my district is extremely agricultural and I think that's one of the things that really sets our county apart from other counties in the areas. We have the best of both worlds. On the east side of the county, we have urban areas, great amenities, but you drive, 5 minutes west and you're in the country. And for me, that's something that's important that we maintain. And one of the reasons I'm thankful I'm on this committee. So thank you.
So we work together all in agreement in a nonpartisan manner to this, and it's fantastic.
We're all on the same team. This started years ago. I mean, they had the zoning ordinances, right to farm, and it's just been an attitude that people have. And when I was on the state board, I was amazed at how people in other counties didn't get along. We got Mark Armstrong. We have the finest guy in the state. It's just by luck. He could have gone somewhere else, but we're a lucky county. And it's you asked me about the organic people complaining about how everything costs so much. I have
And
a
I've read
list
that,
for
I
you.
read that in the paper.
I have a list for you, and there's no real list of how who is organic. We have them, but you have to search through it. It's kind of like going to the county's website. You have to be really inventive to get through it.
There's a lot of stuff. there.
Yeah, but at any rate, Liz told me yesterday that she went to Jewel just to get eggs, $6 a dozen. Just plain eggs. Wow. And well, we had to destroy several million bird fox in other states. And the only way, they need to come up with a way of treating bird flu. Maybe they'll get all shots like we do, but that's the way they treat it. They kill all the birds,
Yeah, they
and
do.
that's some terrible waste.
I agree. The purpose of my
you.
question is I was reading an article that supplies commodities, feed and whatnot for organic farms. Organic farms 110%. And many organic farms can no longer afford to be truly organic. So they're reducing their certification. And they were lamenting the fact that that may have to happen. But what was presented to me at the meeting I was referencing yesterday is that locally grown food has more nutrients than organic food that's shipped from another state for sale at one of our local grocery stores. So that our resources to buy tomatoes, because I love tomatoes, or whatever other locally sourced produce has, even though it may not be certified organic, has better flavor and more nutrients than organic that's shipped. And that I thought was interesting.
Did they give a reason why?
I'll let Mark go into that.
Good luck, right, Mark?
Sure. Well, we always learn from our partners. We had a meeting yesterday with Janie Maxwell, Executive Director of the Illinois Farmers Market Association. And she explained, what they're finding with certification is that their customers don't necessarily, need the certification to still want to purchase their fresh products. So sometimes that the cost benefit analysis doesn't prove out, but there's a lot of growers who are growing organic. They may not be obtaining the certification, but grow organic. But all those costs begin to add up.
Do we track what farmers are doing organic versus non within the county?
We do as best we can. We have a maintain, and Matt will get into that a little bit when we describe what we do. But that is one of the things we do is, and it's continually growing, which is
Right.
awesome. We
great,
keep
yeah.
learning about new people coming into the field.
Thank you.
Yes?
So, I had, a daughter who lived in Colorado. In Colorado, you could use your, whatever it's called, I still call it food stamps because I'm very old. But in Colorado, you could use those benefits at the farmers markets because they were promoting, healthy living. And if Illinois would do that, that would be awesome. Dewey.
Yeah, that was another topic of our discussion yesterday, was the use of link
Thank you.
cards. And then beyond the ability to use link, there's some programs that will actually add to that to incentivize people to buy additional fresh fruits and vegetables. And we discussed some strategies to help increase that participation among our farmers markets, because some of it is for smaller markets, it's hard to administer. But they're doing some things downstate that we want to bring and start doing here, where maybe one market can be the administrator for a number of markets and get more participation.
Excellent.
Why not? Joe wants to add something.
Well, I just wanted to add that as I mentioned, you get a complimentary membership and that you should be receiving, and if you're not receiving, let our office know, but you should be receiving the state publication, which is called Farm Week. And then also on a quarterly basis, the Illinois Farm Bureau produces this Partners magazine, which is really geared towards the urban membership. As we remember, we have different classes of membership. In Kane County, we have about 16,000 members. A majority of them are insurance customers. We have about 900, what we call our M members, our voting members, who are in most cases either landowner or a farmer. So that's kind of the mix that we have. But it's like I say, if you're not getting these publications, let the office know and we'll make sure that you get them. Thank you, Mike.
Any more questions? Or should we move on? Are you ready to move on? We got the Janice Hill and Matt Hansley overview of the agricultural programs.
Good morning. This is Mark Van Kerkhoff again. I'm going to introduce our team. We're trying to come up a way. First of all, welcome to the new board members, to the board and to this committee, and also former board members who are also new to the committee. Our Development Community Services Department has a couple of different divisions, one of which is our planning division. Two of our team support the work of the Agriculture Committee. We actually have one team member who recently left us for employment with the Village of Montgomery. So we have a current vacancy that we're going to be working on filling this year. But with me on Zoom is Janice Hill, who is nationally known as an expert in her field and has brought many great ideas and implemented our farmland protection program. To my right here is Matt Tansley. I'm going to let them talk a little bit about what they do. Blair, I don't know if you could move or put the slide up of, it's called Agriculture in Kane County. And while Blair is doing that, I'll note Jody Welnick, who's later on the agenda, Director of Environmental and Water Resources, works very closely with our department on all things land use issue. And since soil and water is such an important part of agriculture, is a regular contributor and supporter of this committee also. So we're meeting the other day as a team just to try to figure out how to consolidate to the new board members what it is that we do, so that you don't just get the pieces over the year. And I scratched out some notes on a piece of paper, and lo and behold, Matt Tansley once again amazed us by putting together this slide. So there's sort of two main buckets: the farmland protection program, which Janice is going to talk a little bit about, and then the Growing for Kane, our local food initiative, Matt's going to talk a little bit about. But before they do that, I want to talk a little bit about the funding sources so that you understand most of what you're doing as a committee is not with general revenue fund dollars at all, but it is a mix of funding sources from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. There's a new farm bill that's coming out that determines how much money we get for the farmland protection program. We're the only program in the state of Illinois, so we have been very successful in capturing those funds. We also benefit from use of the county's Grand Victoria Riverboat funding for agriculture. We also go after private and foundation grants across the board. In fact, over the last 8 years, between Matt and Janice and Tony, we've successfully gotten about $1 million in outside grants. For the local foods initiative, USDA, we currently have a $300,000 urban innovation agriculture grant that we're working on. We use riverboat funds to be very flexible and things like we did last year. We did a matching grant program with the Illinois Farmer Market Association, which was very successful. We go after private foundation grants. And then we're currently working, we had put in for using ARPA funds to basically take some of the programs that we are doing and kind of as a pilot, like the farmers market grant that we worked with last year. And instead of applying, $1,000 here and there, looking at really magnifying and supercharging those programs that we found to be working, and use the ARPA funds to do that. So you'll be learning more about that over the course of the year. And with that, I'll turn it over to Janice if you want to talk a little bit about the farmland protection bullet points.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. I'm working remotely today because I am on deadline. So it's kind of a perfect time to talk about the the Farmland Protection Program and the timing for grants. I would have enjoyed seeing all of you in person, so happy holidays. But the federal budget calendar does drive a lot of my schedule. Because as Mark described, the county has generously committed funding for the 50% local match for riverboat grants for farmland protection. But the federal calendar announcement comes through and says, okay, it's time to submit your farm request for the next year and your funding request, and it's due tomorrow. So that's what I'm working on for and why I can't be there today with you all. But if we just focus on that blue area of farmland protection on the side of the screen, this is our, I would call it our flagship program. As Joe and Mark have mentioned, all of you have been part of this fantastic program that is known nationwide now and really stands out as a leader, especially in the Midwest, especially because within the federal world, we are a county-based program, not a state-based program. Many states around the nation have a state farmland protection program, and then counties apply to that. We decided, previous boards, previous staff decided that in order to implement our long-range management plan, starting with the 2020, 2030, that we would go ahead and create a program and implement it based on the principles and guidelines of the county. And so that's what happened. We began the research in 2000. Of course, the table was set, so to speak, because I found documents back to the 1970s that called for land protection, similar to the very early programs in Pennsylvania and New York. So not a new concept in Kane County, not a new concept in our region, but it was the leadership of the board that stepped through to authorize the staff to start researching this. As Joe mentioned, the Farm Bureau was our major partner in researching this and pursuing how we might go about doing this, customized to our county and our needs. And we brought on other partners, including the Soil and Water District and other farmers. So an ordinance was created and funding was granted through riverboat funds to fund 430. And we were off and running. And as Joe mentioned, we have over 6,000 farms. The commission, Farmland Protection Commission, gives guidance and the board approves those funds. A new commission will be appointed, I'm hoping in January at the board meeting. Keeping some of our regular members, including Joe White, who's agreed to move forward for the next term. We always have a slot for Farm Bureau on that. And then we'll have some new members, hopefully too, and then have a follow-up farmland protection meeting in January as well. So I'm still working on that date yet, but we'll have that. We'll talk about a few of the things, as Joe mentioned, lining up our land use planning, our plan with the goals of which farms are selected and moving forward. They had previously approved a list for me to work from, and I've been working with that list. And then move forward on these last two items, which are soil and water resources and mitigation. And I will say always that we are ahead of the game when we're protecting land permanently, when it comes to protecting soil and water and farm viability. With that permanent protection in place, we're always ahead of the game. However, there's a new layer of resources and attention that has come about that I think farmers have always known, but with the changing climate in particular, that we really need to have some strategies that the county, Kane County, can help our farmers implement in a cost-effective way, so that we end up with the best soils, the cleanest water, and as the foundation for viability. And there are many other things that go into viability, but right now those are two at the top. So I'll talk about that later in today's program, but that's really what our program involves. It's a voluntary program. farmers approach the county and say they would like to participate and then move toward permanent land protection. It helps send the message to the development community that this portion of the county is reserved for permanent agriculture. This is not a land use waiting for development to occur. As Joe mentioned, we were able to expand it in 2013 to include farms of all sizes and all locations. Again, something that is not typically part of the federal program or really happens across the country. It's really kind of a new program. So we could protect a farm in an urban area that was 2 acres, or we could, protect farms under our largest acreage for corn and bean production. And we do. We have both. We have all sizes, all locations. We've been pursuing private and foundation grants, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. It was the charge of the Ag Committee and Board for us to start to broaden our funding sources and investment. And so we'll talk a little bit about that money coming through. As we were about midway through our program, we started to recognize that we were seeing diversity in farms, and we knew that there was a connection to locally grown food, as Madam Chair mentioned, and that we had places that were very underserved with local food, but in general, not enough to meet the market demand, basically. And we needed to help farmers that were producing this food stay as well, so as along with all of our farmers and ramp up. So this is all part of our effort also to support not only the land, but multi-generational farms and transfer of farms from one generation to the next, as well as welcoming new farmers into the circle. So with that, we created this Farmland Growing for Kane initiative that complements our flagship program, and it's very diverse. We've done pilots, we've done all kinds of things here that are on the list, and I'm going to turn it over to Matt, who is our specialist in this area, and let him explain and highlight some of our work. It's very diverse, but it all helps support this effort. Oh, and just at the bottom too, I think I mentioned this, but this is always our challenge of the federal budget calendar, our county schedule and budget, and then the growing season, which is what we really must all follow here. Nature sets that growing season. It's now having lots of pressure because of climate change. And so trying to get all of this aligned, sometimes it doesn't work best. So we're going to present some opportunities for trying to line that up. But that's also why I'm remote today, trying to meet that deadline for federal paperwork. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt, unless anyone has any questions.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.
So I really think that Janice framed that perfectly in saying that farmland protection is the flagship program when it comes to agriculture programs and policy for the county. But Growing for Kane has really become an important companion program to the farmland protection program. And going back to its inception, Growing for Kane was an important outgrowth of the farmland protection program, because the vision was originally to look at ways at enhancing or modifying farmland protection to focus on local foods. But the eventual outcome of the Growing for Kane health impact assessment and planning process was that a separate program and set of policies would needed and would effective more effectively in conjunction with that. So the program has really allowed us to do a number of pilot projects that support local foods, that support efforts to better understand what farmers need to kind of help them be more successful in their service to the market. So just to touch on a few projects that we've worked on over the years. So we did pretty early on, when I started working with the county, we conducted a food hub feasibility study. And that was really focused on better understanding ways to connect local food production with regional markets and markets throughout the region, throughout the state, and even neighboring states, and to see if there's an effective way to kind of bridge that supply chain. We later went on to pilot a prescription produce program. This was a partnership with Rush Copley Medical Center. And the idea was to connect their patients being treated for chronic illness with recipes and dietary instruction. And they were also provided with a set of fresh foods that they could use to prepare meals that they were taught in their homes. And we later went on to, we provided a couple of wholesale readiness trainings for farmers to help them, know what kind of steps they need to take to serve local markets, whether it's, good agricultural practice certification or just the best practices when it comes to health and food safety. And more recently, we've been very focused on providing business support grants, mini grants to farmers to kind of help them, get to that next step in whatever goal they're trying to achieve for their businesses. And in addition to that, Growing for Cane has really allowed us to build stronger policies through the county to support these initiatives as well. And you can also see this through some of the amendments that have been made to the county zoning ordinance in terms of better defining what types of activities are considered agritourism, and just making that clear for farmers so they know, what uses are permitted, and also amendments that make it easier for farms to have farm stands on their property, just kind of broadening the spectrum of farms that can have farm stands by right. So we really see that as, steps to kind of make this, a very healthy and supportive ecosystem of farmers as they reach their customers. Oh, and I did just want to address the question too that was raised about organic production. So we did conduct a survey last year that reached about 27 farmers. And of that, there were 7 that indicated that they're either currently farming organic or that they're actively pursuing organic certification. And then in addition to that, there were about a half a dozen or so that said they were interested in pursuing organic production, but hadn't quite taken, active steps down that road. So just to kind of give you a sense of that snapshot.
You got a question? Yeah.
Yeah, man, I have a
Well-
question. Does the county help farmers if they want to go organic with the programs and stuff? I don't know how difficult it is to do it, but a lot of time my experience has been with government bureaucracy. It can be like a big mountain to climb.
Right. It is certainly costly and time consuming too, because it does take 3 years to go through that process and preparing their land to obtain that certification. I say that probably the most effective thing that we have done is providing information to farmers about funding resources and educational resources that they can take advantage of to kind of go down that road and to plan to do that. A lot of the funding that we have provided for mini grants have been more focused on, like capital support and infrastructure support. But we're always looking to kind of better meet the niche needs of our farmers.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
A couple of questions actually, and I don't know if it's for you, Matt, or if it's for Janice, but when we acquire we preserve farms, what's the mechanism that we do that? Are we buying development rights and is a conservation easement being put in place? Legally, how does that work?
Sure, I could answer that question. So Yes, you described it very well. It's a voluntary program.
Yeah.
Each parcel of land has a bundle of rights. And in this particular case of our program, the landowner is selling their right to develop their land or their bundled that development right category at a per acre value. And in exchange for that, we are placing a deed of agriculture conservation easement on the land. It runs in perpetuity. It's funded in most cases, not required, but most cases it's funded 50% by the federal government and the remainder by Kane County, which is the local funding source. And then that easement is recorded at our recorder's office. And then Matt inspects that property along with all of them annually to make sure that it stays in agriculture and submits reporting to the federal government. There are provisions within the easement that should there be an extreme situation and the easement would need to be removed, there's a legal process provided for that and how the funding would be recouped. But that's exactly what it is. Now, on the right-hand side of the screen, when we talk about the Growing for Kane initiative for the smaller local food farms, we offer that as well. So we have one farm that is permanently protected using, through this authorization through Growing for Kane. And it's a 4-acre farm. The federal government is not really big on protecting those really small farms, which is one of the reasons that we offered that. We also have, which we have not used this tool yet, the authorization to do term easements, which Matt is showing here on the screen as the third item. We haven't chosen to do that, but I can see that might come in the next year or two with some of the other funding that we grant out as kind of an exchange agreement for doing certain practices and performances. But yes, that's perfectly described.
I've seen a map of some of our farms we've preserved, and it seems to be more in the southwest corner of the county.
Mhm.
Has there been any, how do we target areas of the county and how are we selling this program to our farmers?
Well, we've never done that because it is a voluntary program. So when we first started, we actually had a farmer brother pair, the Mangers, that said, hey, we'll step forth and we'll be the very first farm. We're interested in this. There was a lot of skepticism, which there always is when you're starting something new. And because they raised their hand first and followed through, they were our first farm. And then there were a whole bunch of other ones that came through. Many of my observation is that it happens because we are so lucky that we still have family-owned farms here. And so what happened is that because we have that strong contingent in Big Rock and Caneville of a lot of related families and generational families, they saw the success with one family member and then applied again. And that is fantastic because what we ended up having is, this concentrated area. I won't call it a block, but a concentrated area that everyone has the confidence that they can continue to invest in their farms over the years. And that's where the economic development side of it comes in. But to your point, the commission after, this is, what we're in, I have to do the math. We're going to our 22nd year now. So the commission, Farmland Protection Commission, has definitely noticed that we'd like to have more investment in the north. But remember, this is a voluntary program. But I will tell you that this new cohort of farms that we hope to come through and what I'm going to call our conservation cohort, tell you more about that later. But anyway, that will include some farms up in the north, big focus in Virgil. So you'll start to see that disbursement, I think, that we all want to see. But we do take the lead of the interest of the farmers too. They have to come forth first.
Thank you.
Any other? Oh, Mrs. Allen. Mrs. Allen is now in the room.
Has come into the building, right? I just wanted to mention that can you imagine? I come from a farm community, my grandparents farmed. And I'm not going to say that they are particular in any way, but can you imagine someone showing up at your door and saying, we're the government and we're here to help? It just have one of the wonderful things about our staff and Janice Hill is winning the trust and the confidence of people so that instead of having the door slammed in their faces, people were willing to check this out and see how it could benefit them. And Janice and Mark, I assume you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like people use this influx of money. They're not going to, a farm is a farmer's 401k, right? When you want to retire, you can sell to a developer and make a bunch of
Then
money.
it's
and-
gone. Then your legacy's gone.
So if somebody decides that they are not going to exercise that, frequently they buy more land so that there's more land for the sons, for the children and grandchildren to farm, or they put the money into more sophisticated equipment. And you know how incredibly expensive that is. When I was first running is when this program was being formed. And believe it or not, there were people at the door who said, nah, what'll happen is some board in the future will just change their minds. And then we've spent all this money on some farmland and now it's going to be turned into a Walgreens. No offense to Walgreens. But if you'll read the contract, and Mr. Williams, I'm sure you will, the contract is cyclical. Anybody can step in at any time and say, well, I think that this should happen, or I think this should happen. And it will bring you right back to where it says that the farmland is protected in perpetuity. It's just a wonderful way for us to keep building our bridges so that, as Madam Chairman said, we protect these parts of the county that are so different from anywhere else. And I think, forgive me if you've already mentioned this, but there are rules for the farms. You have to have a certain kind of soil. You have to pass certain levels of the best soil on earth in order to be part of the program. And that's one of the reasons I think that the farms are in that area, because the soil wins there. So thanks for letting me vent. I just love this program. And
Mark?
I just had one more sort of bigger picture thing to add. Matt mentioned before the Growing for Cane ordinance was passed, the county received a grant from the Pew Charitable Trust to do what's called a health impact assessment. Basically, the question was, what would happen if Kane County grew more food? And I mentioned that because of an important basis of the Growing for Cane initiative is improving the general health of our population. So the health department is a partner in our land use planning as well. And it looked at if we grew more food, had it more accessible to our urban populations, to people who need it, that would benefit everyone. So that is one of the foundational aspects of the Growing for Cane. It's not just growing more food. It's to have it accessible locally and have it accessible to people who wouldn't otherwise afford it. The other aspect of it was the economic development component. Growing for Cane is as much a economic development initiative also, especially when we look at the programs that help support what are really a special class of small businesses. And those small businesses support our other important small businesses like restaurants and grocers and everything. So a lot of what we've used out of the Economic Development Fund, which is funded from Riverboat to do some of these pilot programs, is in recognition that it creates jobs and dollars that get recycled and respent within our communities. So Just want to mention that as well as the shout out to the health department because of their support and role in this.
Matt, are you ready to? You have another report. I
I'm
see.
ready. Yep,
Yeah.
I'll let Blair pull up the next item.
We won't be able to follow the last meeting. They had record. They were over in half an hour, right?
Yes, we were.
Huh? 27 minutes. That's an
I was going to say
all-time-
28, Mr. Chairman, but I'll take
Wow.
27.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's a good segue to our most recent Growing for Kane project. And I do want to give just a little bit of background for some of the newer members on the committee. So this is a study, an assessment that we are looking to develop really for the benefit of livestock farmers. And the impetus of this emerged during the last couple of years when we were conducting surveys and getting feedback from farmers during the pandemic about what some of their short-term needs are, but as well as some of the long-standing challenges and issues that they've been experiencing. And it was really a good window into, some of the unique challenges that livestock farmers are facing, which we hadn't really looked at as a specific subset within the agriculture and food growing community in the county. So we really got a good sense of some of the longstanding challenges that they face in the industry in terms of farm consolidation and challenges with access to processing facilities. And a lot of these challenges were just completely magnified during the pandemic. So we really kind of recognized the need to provide them with some more targeted resources and information that can kind of help them in the competitive marketplace. We were successful in receiving funding from Compeer Financial. This is one of our foundation grants to develop a market assessment that is going to provide useful market information that local livestock farmers can use, specifically helping them to identify products that are in high demand and channels where that demand exists. So it's easier for them to connect with opportunities that they might not be taking advantage of. So I just kind of want to focus on where we are in the process. So currently, we have within the last few weeks released a request for proposals for a consultant who will really be taking the lead in developing this market assessment and gathering all the information and composing the final document. So we released the request for proposal back on the 7th, and we decided to leave that open until the 17th of January, just recognizing that the holidays, are going to make it a little bit challenging for consultants to kind of get their proposals together. We'd ordinarily allow maybe 2 to 3 weeks for this type of response time frame, but we just opened it up a little bit more. And so we have since the purchasing department has distributed this announcement, this request for proposal to a number of consultants that we have identified that we feel would be good potential candidates to apply for this, as well as a number of networks that reach consultants. And I've just highlighted a few of those networks that have pretty extensive reach into local food consulting groups and organizations. So we're trying to cast a pretty wide net to reach a qualified group of applicants. I'm sorry?
What is the Wallace Center?
That is a foundation that does a lot of research on local foods. They created one of the most important resources that they created that we have been referencing is a program called the Pasture Project. And it really looks at some of the most innovative methods and techniques that farmers are using to manage livestock, to be successful operators, successful businesses. So they do a lot of research. I mean, they're really like a think tank, I would say, as far as local foods, but that's kind of their specific focus on livestock through the pasture project. So in terms of this is just a quick snapshot of the evaluation criteria that we'll be looking at. So certainly we want to, we'll be giving a lot of consideration to the consultant's focus on the objectives that we outlined in the RFP. Certainly their experience and qualifications in terms of doing other local food studies, working with farmers, being knowledgeable of the challenges and issues that they're dealing with. Of course, we'll be considering the overall cost of their proposal and making sure that we're getting the most in terms of the grant funding that we have, but also capturing as many of the deliverables and objectives that we're hoping to capture. And then certainly we'll consider their references that can testify to their experience and be able to see some samples of the work that they've done. So we have put together a small panel that will be evaluating these proposals. I'm happy to say that we do have two, in addition to two county staff, we do have two outside representatives. One is a livestock farmer in Kane County, so we do have some specialized experience. We consider our subject matter expert who is familiar with the issues that livestock farmers are dealing with, which is going to be important to have that perspective when looking at and when talking with potential consultants that we might be selecting. And so we'll be reviewing and scoring those proposals and making a final decision in early February. So we'll be presenting our recommended candidate to the Agriculture Committee, hopefully in February for consideration and approval at the March meeting of the county board. So right now so the applications are being accepted. And so, if there are any inquiries, we're in the phase now where we would be responding to those and answering any questions that consultants have about the application. And then, and then I just outlined the other steps in the process. And so with that, I'd be happy to answer.
And I had a question.
Yeah.
You showed about 7 organizations. How many have asked, for more information, shown an interest?
I don't have I know there have been some that have requested the request for proposal. So any organization that wants to apply has to formally make that request through the purchasing department.
Right.
I believe there have been at least a half dozen. I don't have the current list of organizations and individuals.
And that's fine. I was just curious. I mean, because I've, been on the board now a little over 2 weeks, and some of the meetings, they said, well, only one person submitted, to the RFP. And that's kind of where I'm coming from. Hopefully more than one will submit, right?
Right. And we do expect the bulk of the applications to come in after the holiday season.
Right.
So
So
we
it's not
expect,
due till the 17th, right?
of course.
And
Yes.
if it's like most students, they wait till the very end to submit, right?
That is typically the case, even with consultants.
Okay, thank you.
Are you ready to pass the baton?
I am, yes.
Right, I think we're going to hear from Janice Hill again about Donnelly grant updates.
Yes. I believe that we have more grants in process than we ever have in our department right now within this ag and farming world. It's a very exciting time. I will tell you that one of the reasons we're successful is because of this committee. All funders want to know that there are a group of policy makers and decision makers that are overseeing the process and helping guide us. The county in its entirety is also part of the reason. The fact that we have purchasing department, we have finance, we have auditors, we have excellent ratings, that also gives the assurances to this investment that funders are making, and whether that's the federal government, state, or any of these philanthropies, that's all part of our submittal packet when we're going for these grants to show that we have that. And so it is a very exciting time for us, and there's a lot of overlap in relationship between the different grants so that we can learn, because we have found that before changing policy or asking for more money or any of these things, that we better do a deep dive into this. Matt and I have become agriculture professionals, but we're land use planners. That's what our profession is. And we sit in a planning department. So all of this is a very unique situation. And having partners, strong partners, including the Kane County Farm Bureau and Soil and Water District, are essential as well. So because we're not making these decisions in a vacuum. And so these are the reasons that we were given this money to work with. And in the case of the Donnelly grant, this is our Donnelly in Chicago, their foundation grant. They in the past have only worked in the natural resource area, decided to move into farms, agriculture, and the relationship with the green infrastructure of the community. This was their first round of funding. We were successful in that. There's a lot of relationship building too that's involved with all of this. You really they have to know who we are and develop relationship before the funding happens. So we were able to be in settings over the years with the staff from Donnelly, and they're very aware of our work here in Kane County. Same thing with American Farmland Trust, just a little history session. American Farmland Trust wrote 2 white papers that launched our farmland protection program. They're a national nonprofit that specializes in land protection, but now is kind of moving out in the arena of some of the related topics with land protection, but they're foundational work in that. And they set us on our course of creating our ordinance. So we've stayed partners for quite a while. In fact, I've been invited, and Mark has approved this, and I'm very excited. I'll be going to DC in March to be part of a group that talks to the staff that creates all these rules and regulations we have to live with. So I'm very excited about that. I'm going to have a list. But anyway, soil stewardship is one of the latest topics that American Farmland Trust has decided to delve into. And we were invited to participate in I think this is the second year of their soil stewardship program, specifically for farms that are permanently protected through the Farmland Protection Program. How can we assist those farmers in improving in their soils? And then that can kind of go out to all the farms. So I'm going to talk about how these 2 grants have the timing is perfect because they've come together, and what to expect for 2023. Okay, next slide. So I think that I love this statement from American Farmland Trust, but something I think we all know, that investment of soils, and they were specifically talking about an Illinois report, which will help us in working toward nutrient loss reduction, which is a huge strategy that we are all involved with to yield these healthier soils. And that's going to help our farmers and our farms be resilient to the impacts of climate change. So this is where we start to see the 2 things come together, how working toward healthier soils is one strategy toward creating what I'm calling climate smart farms. And this is going to be our first grouping of farms to come through and be given extra resources, these grant resources, so that we can all learn how to help and what the most effective tools are to help farms in moving forward. Okay, next slide. So the first goal within this $10,000 grant from American Farmland Trust was for Matt and I to have training and meet our colleagues from mostly the Midwest to see what everybody else is doing, and then start to work on an action plan for our county, for our grouping of farms. Those are, again, the farms that are permanently protected, and what we can do to help with soil testing, and then move forward in terms of developing resources for farms and then do a lot of evaluation, because that's something that farmers don't have time to do. And that's where we can step in and help with that, bringing extra resources and evaluation. And I think I've said this before, all the farmers know this, NRCS is very poorly staffed, particularly in Illinois. They're trying to ramp up their staffing and their experts, but we're way behind. And so if a farmer looks to NRCS for the support they should have, it's often not there, or not there in the depth that it should be or is in other locations. So the county board is committed funding through Fund 430, and now we have these grants as well to bring in the experts that the farmers need to help with this too. So that's part of what we're doing with the American Farmland Trust grant, focusing on soil health building. Okay, and next slide. But that fits into this broader topic of working within the context of climate change. And it's a big challenge. You know, farmers only have how many seasons in their lifetime to farm, and it moves very quickly. As we all know, it seems like time just zips by, and to implement any change in their operation it poses risk in itself. So how can the county, because as our role here, how in the county can we help farmers experiment with the techniques and opportunities that are out there? In fact, find the techniques and opportunities. It's a real research project to find out what funding is out there for your farm, and help do the testing without putting everything at risk. And in fact, every expert in this field that I've talked to always advises farmers, you know, just take a piece. If you want to try doing something different, take a small piece of your overall operation and do some experiments. This is not something that happens immediately. And then of course you need to evaluate those changes over the years, whether we're talking row crops or nitrogen reduction or implements reduction, purchasing anything, all of these things take time. So part of this also is to do some anticipation of what's going to happen here in King County. I think the farmers know that what happens in one part of the county is not even the same as what happens in another part in terms of storms. And we've had drought in the northern part of the county that wasn't experienced in the southern part. So regardless of your operation, regardless of what you're producing, these are the things that are there. We do have some projection models that we can work with. We can look at change over time. And there are other resources that we can help to anticipate this. And of course, this is important for all the county, not just the ag portion, but we're focusing on that right now. And then we can look at some other states and locations where they've moved this along a little bit quicker. Right now, just to kind of give you a taste, we're working with a small farm that's going through a transition from their existing operation. It's very small, it's 8 acres, new beginning farmers recently purchased, and they're going to USDA certified organic with a permaculture operation. So big change on that little property, but they have a lot of water issues. So how they would like to use the water that's there more than that's necessary, kind of focus it so they can also use it for irrigation in this permaculture operation. And it'll be producing food in a certified organic way through nuts and fruit trees. Just very, very innovative and exciting. But how they go from there, where they are existing today in this farm they purchased to where they want to go, this is a perfect example of the small farm that we're talking about and making those measurement changes and things. So we'll see some support that we want to give using these grant funds to help understand that. Then we have our grouping of our larger permanently protected farms, some new ones that will be coming through that want to do the same thing, but within the corn and bean rotation. So that not that they want to change to a different crop, but They're looking at how they can improve their health, their practices, and protect their investment, and that we can protect our investment, that we're putting in funding to protect that land. So everyone is looking for how, while we don't know the complete impact of climate change, we can anticipate that and then try to shore everyone up, but measuring all the way through. Okay, next slide. So this is my last slide, just to kind of give you an idea of what we'll talk about in 2023. We'll give you a little bit more detail about a couple of those small farms that are going to be represent our pilot, and then the larger farm groupings, which is up in that northern area that I just talked about. And we have some down in Caneville too. We have a northern group and a southern group. And then we'll have a budget amendment for expense categories, because we do have this $110,000 to invest in this program, but we need to, line up our budget for 35 so that we can go through with those expenditures. We'll definitely have training options. Perfect example you brought up earlier, the cost for transitioning to USD organic. That's a perfect expense that would fall within this funding within this group. We are going to provide a stipend for the participants. It takes time to do all of this work that goes along with this. We haven't set up the amounts yet, but we know that's one of the category. The big piece that our funders are particularly interested in is this financial incentive to fill the gap between what federal payments will pay to do some of this and the true cost. And that's part of that, reducing the risk, because that is probably the biggest challenge farmers will say is what is it going to cost me to do this? If you approach NRCS and you say, okay, I want to do all these improvements, there's no companion financial document that says, this is what it's going to cost to do these things. Kind of surprised me, because pretty much anywhere you go, you're going to get a list of, this is what you can do, the menu, and then the prices. There isn't a published price list that goes on the menu of the practices. And it really depends on if you're a beginning farmer, if you're a military veteran, if not, all these things, it changes. So we've already started working on that to develop the menu with the prices. It's a big tool that didn't exist. It's kind of amazing. And then looking to find these conservation consultants and the proper soil testing. Again, Matt and I can only go so far. We're not ag professionals with this level of expertise. So we'll be bringing on conservation consultants. That's the money that the board approved in the 430 budget, along with funding from these grants. So we'll get more into detail in 2023. This will be something we talk about periodically, as well as getting it going. Does anyone have any questions?
If there's no questions, now we can talk about water resources, right?
I feel like the committee might already be overwhelmed with information.
Yes.
Jody Walnick, the Director of Environmental and Water Resources. Thank you for the introduction, Mark. I also welcome the new committee members and the returning members. We're here for a lot of the water resource side of things, but we do actually touch on the agricultural sustainability side of things in our environmental group. So I will try to quickly run through some of the programs that we do that fall under the Ag Committee. One of the main strives from our department from about 25 years ago was to start reactivating our drainage districts within the county. Many of our drainage districts over time had become defunct and no longer had a sitting committee. While some are elected, we do appoint members of those drainage districts. And one of the biggest challenges we've seen and Kane County is our absentee landowner. So while Janice talks about the farmland preservation program and the historic families we have here, through the central part of Kane County where many of our drainage districts exist, we have absentee landowners that do not do much in regards to the drainage on their property. And so we come across many farmers that are still trying to farm their land, and their drain tiles and all their drainage is under silt and through channels that's clogged off with vegetation. And so they will come to the county for assistance on a technical level to reactivate those drainage districts. And we will provide support to those drainage districts, whether it be filling in as their secretary, representing them and the Illinois Association of Drainage Districts, and provide any other assistance they might need to get those drainage districts up and running. This drainage is critical to our farmland preservation. If a farm cannot drain, you cannot grow crops unless you might be working on the rice paddy side of things. And we have hundreds and hundreds of thousands of drain tiles within the county, many of them approaching 150 years old. The residents that move into the larger acre parcels in these agricultural areas often don't have much understanding of the importance of agricultural drainage, not know that these drain tiles run through their property, and plant a tree right over it. And so within a matter of a few years, you have agriculture area that ends up drowned out because the drain tile is blocked with roots. So we do a lot of education out in the county about agricultural drainage, the importance of it, and do provide that technical assistance to anyone wanting to reactivate a drainage district, and as well to move forward with some of the maintenance on those drainage ditches and channels through our farmland that are in sore need of maintenance. Another area that we work on quite significantly is the Gulf hypoxia issue that Janice mentioned. This is the issue down in the Gulf of Mexico that is occurring because of the nutrient loading that's coming from the Midwest. Specifically because we are so flat and drain tiled, one of our major contributors is nitrogen. You see more phosphorus contribution to that issue down in southern Illinois where it gets more hilly. The phosphorus does come off the fields with the erosion of the topsoil. Whereas in our case, many of our fields are mainly drained by those drain tiles, and you have the dissolved nitrogen that gets into the system that way. So as part of this program and our attempts to try and reduce that nitrogen loading and keep the soil on the farms, we've been working diligently with Janice's help and doing a program in Western Kane where we are looking specifically at water quality testing of our agricultural tiles and our agricultural channels. And what we want to really accomplish from this is many of the programs in the past have been very bulk commodity type of thing. So let's put in a buffer strip along all the channels in this watershed. Well, if all the channels are bermed off from the channel because of historic dredging of that channel, none of the water is actually running through that buffer strip to get to the channel. And so doing it that way, a lot of those practices just don't make sense. So right practice, right place is really key in our study. And what we want to do is break the county down by agricultural watersheds and look at where the impairments are within that watershed, and then have a host of practices that are going to give you the biggest bang for the buck within those watersheds, as opposed to just, throwing anything at the wall and see what sticks. Let's put the right practices in the right locations where they're really needed and are going to make the biggest impact. So that's key to that program. We just wrapped up our second year of testing and are working on reporting and then goals for these watersheds that we should bring forward to this committee in 2023. We also, as mentioned earlier, we work closely with the Farm Bureau. We did have an agricultural subcommittee with our 2019 Kane County Stormwater Ordinance update. We did want to specifically look at many of the challenges we were seeing from our farmers And trying to put a little detention basin on a 400-acre farm didn't make a lot of sense to us, especially when you've got several miles to actually get to the nearest creek. So improving the options, so we're still providing some sort of stormwater benefit or water quality benefit on those farms and giving them the option of doing NRCS conservation practices that improve their farms and their production over just doing a hole in the ground has been really beneficial. We do also, on the sustainability side of things, we've worked with the development department and facilitated and made much easier the solar permitting. We have many farmers out in Western Kane County that have jumped on the solar programs and are using solar power to power their farmsteads. And so making that permitting process as simple as possible for them and giving them the opportunities for any grants that are coming through is worked very well. And we will be in 2023, we're working with Pale Blue Dot, which is a consultant out of Minnesota, on our climate action implementation plan. This is actually an update to the Kane County Operational Sustainability Plan, which the original plan focused mainly on county facilities, and then phase 2 is to be more of an outreach to our municipalities and our residents in unincorporated Kane County. And so looking at the goals of that plan, we kind of reimagined it as a climate action implementation plan that can be utilized by many of our rural communities, and will give them options at the level that they're at to implement sustainability practices within their community. So if you're more, you have more staff and you're more able to implement more sophisticated programs, you can go that route. Or if you're a smaller staff or no staff at all, there'll be options for those communities as well. One of the key sections of our implementation plan that does not exist anywhere else in Illinois is going to be an agricultural section. We do have greenhouse gases contributing from our agricultural areas. Dane County, Wisconsin, where Madison is at, has a great agricultural section. And so we will be in the new year reaching out to the Farm Bureau to try to set up a meeting to start looking at the numbers and where we're at and some possible practices that could be implemented on the farms to increase the sustainability. And that ties in a lot with Matt and Janice's work on the soil work that they're doing as well. So we're excited to see that and are hoping to get that meeting set up before the farm season begins, so we can grab any farmers interested in participating in that while they're during their downtime. So I think that's it. If you have any questions, please let me know, and we will be here monthly to report back on our programs.
That it?
Yes, I successfully put you to sleep.
No questions? If you ever, individual questions, sometimes it's easier just to call Jody or Mark and
But also,
answer. the
after a
question.
certain amount of time, I think the questions go
Yeah,
down.
we've used up all the time Jarrett made up, and here we are. There's no new business. And we have a motion to put the reports on file unanimously. approved.
Unanimously, I make a motion, we put the reports on.
And any opposition? Seeing none? No executive session? And we need a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Is there a
Williams, second.
Okay.